The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thompson Industries executive office, casting long shadows across Catherine Mitchell's trembling hands as she stared at the divorce papers before her. Her husband of 3 years, James Thompson, stood with his back to her, his tall frame silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. The silence between them felt heavier than the weighted pen in her grip. "I won't sign them," Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle hum of the building's ventilation system. At 32, she had imagined growing old with James, building a family together, not watching their marriage crumble in his sterile corner office on the 48th floor. James turned slowly, his expertly tailored suit failing to hide the tension in his shoulders. "You don't have a choice, Kate. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. We both know it." His blue eyes, once warm with love, now held the same calculating coldness he reserved for hostile takeovers. Catherine rose from her chair, her emerald dress, the one James had always loved, catching the light. "A mistake? Is that what you call the last 3 years? Is that what you call us?" She pressed her hand against her still flat stomach, a secret she'd planned to share with him over dinner that very evening. "What I call us is finished," James replied, turning back to the window. "The settlement is more than generous. Take it and go. There's nothing left for you here." His words carried the finality of a judge's gavel, but Catherine caught the slight tremor in his voice, a crack in his carefully constructed facade. "You're running away, James. Just like your father did." The words left her mouth before she could stop them, and she watched as his reflection in the window stiffened. They both knew the weight of that comparison. How James had sworn he'd never become like Richard Thompson, the man who'd abandoned his family for a younger woman, leaving James and his mother to survive on food stamps and broken promises. James spun around, his composure slipping for just a moment. "Don't you dare bring him into this. You don't know anything about—" He caught himself, straightening his tie as if adjusting his armor. "The papers will be filed today with or without your signature. Security will escort you out. Whatever we had, Catherine, it's over." Catherine gathered her purse with shaking hands, her wedding ring catching the sunlight one last time before she placed it on his desk. "You're wrong, James. It's not over. It's just beginning." She walked to the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor in a steady rhythm that belied her crumbling world. "And when I come back, you'll understand exactly what you've thrown away." As the elevator descended, Catherine allowed herself one moment of weakness, one silent tear for the dreams that had just shattered. But beneath her grief, a seed of determination took root. James Thompson had no idea that in her body grew not one, but 2 new lives, lives that would change everything. She stepped out into the bright spring morning, her hands still pressed protectively against her stomach. The doorman Mike, who had watched her walk through these doors every morning for the past 3 years, tipped his hat one final time. "Good day, Mrs. Thompson," he said, his kind eyes showing concern. "It's Ms. Mitchell now, Mike," she replied, managing a small smile. "And yes, it will be a good day. Eventually." 5 years passed like a slow-turning page, each day adding another layer to Catherine Mitchell's transformation. Seattle's morning fog rolled off Puget Sound as she stood in her home office, reviewing the quarterly reports from her thriving tech consultancy. The wall of windows offered a view similar to the one from James's old office, though she tried not to dwell on that parallel. "Mommy? Alex took my dinosaur again?" Emma's voice carried from the playroom, followed by the thunder of small feet on hardwood floors. Catherine smiled, setting down her tablet as her twins burst into the office. At 4.5, they were perfect mirrors of each other, and of James. Emma's blue eyes flashed with righteous indignation while Alexander clutched a plastic T-Rex to his chest, his father's stubborn jaw set in determination. "Did not. She said I could borrow it." Alex protested, unconsciously running a hand through his dark hair just like James used to do when frustrated. The gesture made Catherine's heart catch for a moment. "For 5 minutes? It's been forever." Emma countered, her analytical mind already keeping track of time like the businessman she'd never met. Catherine often wondered if these traits were nature's idea of a joke, her children inheriting the best and worst of their father without ever having met him. "Okay, you too," Catherine intervened, crouching down to their level. "Alex, what did we say about respecting other people's property?" She kept her voice gentle but firm, the same tone she'd mastered in countless business negotiations over the years. Alex's lower lip trembled slightly. "That we should always ask and listen when they say no," he recited, reluctantly holding out the dinosaur to his sister. Emma snatched it back, but Catherine caught her hand. "And Emma, what did we say about sharing with your brother?" Emma's expression softened. "That family helps family, and being kind is more important than being right. She looked at the dinosaur, then back at her brother. Do you want to play Jurassic Park together? You can be the good dinosaur this time. Catherine watched her children rush back to their game, their argument forgotten as quickly as it had started. Her assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, wearing an expression Catherine had come to recognize over the years. The Thompson Industries quarterly report just dropped, Rachel said quietly, knowing the weight these words carried. Their stock took a significant hit after the failed merger with West Coast Tech. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership changes. Catherine straightened, smoothing her charcoal gray blazer. Book me on the next flight to New York. Call Sarah about watching the twins. And Rachel? It's time to activate Project Phoenix? Rachel nodded, her fingers flying across the tablet. The stakes in Thompson Industries that you've been quietly acquiring through shell companies over the past 3 years are now worth nearly 20% of the company. With the current market volatility? James won't see it coming, Catherine finished, her voice carrying none of the turmoil she felt inside. He always said I didn't understand his world. He never realized I was learning, watching, planning, even before he threw me away. She walked to her desk, picking up a framed photo of the twins at their 4th birthday party. Call Marcus at the New York office. Tell him to prepare the documentation for the hostile takeover. It's time James Thompson learned that karma has a 5-year compound interest rate. As Rachel left to make the arrangements, Catherine stood at her window, watching the fog lift over the sound. Somewhere in the playroom she could hear her children laughing, oblivious to the storm their mother was about to unleash. Part of her wondered if she was doing the right thing, if revenge was worth disrupting their peaceful life. But then she remembered the cold look in James's eyes that day in his office, the way he'd dismissed their marriage as a mistake, and her resolve hardened. Game on, James, she whispered to her reflection. Let's see how you handle losing everything, just like I did. James Thompson stood at his office window, unconsciously mirroring his pose from 5 years ago. The New York skyline had changed, new towers, new lights, new shadows, but the weight of loneliness felt exactly the same. His assistant's voice crackled over the intercom, interrupting his brooding. Mr. Thompson, the board members are assembled in the conference room. Mr. Davidson is asking about the West Coast Tech situation. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Linda. James loosened his tie slightly, feeling the pressure of the upcoming meeting. The failed merger wasn't just a professional setback. It was the first major failure of his career, and the vultures were circling. He grabbed his tablet, scanning the latest market reports with growing unease. The conference room fell silent as he entered. Robert Davidson, his oldest board member and former friend of his father, spoke first. James, the shareholders are getting nervous. This merger was supposed to be your golden ticket to expanding our tech division. Instead, we're looking at a 15% drop in stock value. James kept his face neutral, though his fingers tightened around his leather portfolio. The market is volatile, Bob. We can weather this storm if we what? Davidson interrupted. Keep throwing good money after bad? Your father would have never let things get this far. The mention of his father hit James like a physical blow. My father was a coward who ran away from his responsibilities, he snapped, then immediately regretted the outburst. The board members exchanged meaningful glances. Speaking of responsibilities, Davidson continued, sliding a document across the table, we've received notice that a significant portion of our shares has been acquired by Phoenix Enterprises over the past 3 years. They're making moves for a hostile takeover. James grabbed the document, his blood running cold as he read the details. Phoenix Enterprises. I've never heard of them. They're based in Seattle. Founded 5 years ago by, Davidson checked his notes, but James wasn't listening anymore. 5 years. Seattle. It couldn't be. His phone buzzed with an incoming email. The sender's name made his heart stop, Catherine Mitchell. The subject line read simply, remember what I said? James opened the email with trembling fingers, Davidson's voice fading into background noise. A photo attachment showed Catherine sitting at an executive desk, looking more powerful and beautiful than he remembered. But it was the background of the photo that made his world tilt. 2 children, a boy and a girl, playing in a corner of what was clearly her office. They looked about 4 or 5 years old. They had his eyes. James? Are you listening? Davidson's voice cut through his shock. We need a plan of action. Phoenix Enterprises is demanding a meeting tomorrow, and their CEO is flying in from Seattle today. James stared at the photo, memories flooding back. Catherine's last words in this very building, when I come back, you'll understand exactly what you've thrown away. The children in the photo stared back at him with his own eyes, his own features. Twins. She'd been pregnant with twins. Oh God, he whispered, drawing concerned looks from the board members. His perfect world, built on the ashes of his marriage and maintained by 5 years of denial, was about to implode. Catherine wasn't just coming back for revenge. She was coming back with proof of everything he'd lost, everything he'd thrown away. Linda's voice came over the intercom again. Mr. Thompson? There's a Ms. Mitchell here to see you. She says she's an old friend. James looked at the board members, then back at the photo on his phone. Send her in, Linda, he said, his voice hoarse. It's time to face the music. Davidson leaned forward. James, who is Catherine Mitchell? She's... James swallowed hard, straightening his tie. She's the woman who's about to destroy everything I've built. And I deserve every second of what's coming. The click of Catherine's heels against the marble floor echoed through the conference room like a countdown. James watched her approach, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the one he'd dismissed 5 years ago. Gone was the soft uncertainty in her emerald eyes, replaced by a steel that matched her perfectly tailored navy suit. Her honey blonde hair, once long and loose, was now cut in a sharp bob that emphasized her jawline and her determination. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Catherine's voice carried the confidence of someone who knew they held all the cards. I apologize for interrupting your meeting, but I believe you were just discussing Phoenix Enterprises? She placed her briefcase on the table, her movements deliberate and controlled. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I'm Catherine Mitchell, CEO of Phoenix Enterprises, and I own 20% of Thompson Industries. Davidson's eyebrows shot up. You're the one behind Phoenix? But you're a woman? James's ex-wife? Someone you all dismissed as just another trophy marriage? Catherine's smile could have cut glass. Yes to all of the above. And now I'm also your company's largest individual shareholder. James found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. Why now, Kate? After 5 years? 5 years, 2 months, and 13 days, she corrected him, pulling out documents from her briefcase. Exactly the amount of time it took to build something strong enough to tear down your empire. She turned to the board members. I've prepared a detailed presentation on Thompson Industries' vulnerabilities, particularly in the tech sector. Your failed merger wasn't just bad luck. It was the result of outdated thinking and a failure to innovate. This is personal, James interrupted, standing up. The board doesn't need to. Everything is personal in business, James. You taught me that. Catherine's composure cracked slightly as she met his gaze. Just like it was personal when you had security escort me out of this building. When you didn't even give me a chance to tell you about, she caught herself, straightening her shoulders. Davidson cleared his throat. Tell him about what, Ms. Mitchell? About his children, she said quietly, causing a ripple of murmurs around the table. The twins turned 5 next month. Emma has your analytical mind, James. And Alex, he does that same thing with his hair when he's frustrated. She pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. I thought you might want to see what you gave up. James stared at the phone screen, a video of the twins at what appeared to be a school play. The little girl was directing other children with confident gestures while the boy adjusted his costume with focused determination. His children. His family. The family he'd thrown away because he'd been too afraid to break the cycle his father had started. I never knew, he whispered, his voice breaking. Kate, if I had known. You would have what? Catherine's voice was sharp. Stayed out of obligation? Tried to buy my silence like your father did with his other family? The board members shifted uncomfortably at this revelation. I didn't come back just for revenge, James. I came back to show you exactly what kind of man you've become, and to give our children the future they deserve. She laid out another document. This is my proposal for restructuring Thompson Industries. The company needs new blood, new ideas. The board can vote to accept my leadership as CEO, or I can continue buying shares until I have controlling interest. Either way, change is coming. James looked from the document to Catherine, seeing for the first time not just the woman he'd lost, but the force of nature she'd become. The other family, how did you know about them? I did what you never had the courage to do, Catherine replied. I found them. Your half-siblings in Boston. They told me everything, how your father paid them to stay quiet, how he visited them in secret for years while pretending to be on business trips. Sound familiar, James? The late nights at the office? The emergency meetings? The color drained from James's face as the parallels became clear. He'd spent so much time running from his father's legacy that he'd become its perfect copy. Kate, please, let me explain. You'll have your chance, she said, gathering her things. I'm staying in town for a week. The twins are with their nanny in Seattle, but they've been asking questions about their father. Questions I'm tired of avoiding. She handed him a business card. Ball's in your court, James. But this time, I'm the one with the power to walk away. As Catherine turned to leave, Davidson spoke up. Ms. Mitchell? The board would be interested in hearing more about your restructuring proposal. She paused at the door, allowing herself a small smile of triumph. I thought you might be. My office will send over the complete documentation. Oh, and James? She met his eyes one final time. The twins' birthday party is on the 15th. Don't send a gift unless you're planning to be there to give it to them yourself. After the board members filed out, James remained alone in the conference room, Catherine's business card burning a hole in his pocket. He pulled out his phone again, staring at the video of the twins, his children, until his vision blurred. The boy's focused expression, the girl's commanding presence. How had he not seen this coming? The signs had been there 5 years ago, in Catherine's determination, in her protective hand over her stomach. His private elevator carried him to his penthouse apartment, the same one he'd shared with Catherine during their marriage. He'd kept it exactly as she'd left it, telling himself it was easier than redecorating, but now the truth felt more pathetic. The cream-colored walls she'd chosen, the abstract paintings they'd picked together at that gallery in Soho, he'd preserved it all like a mausoleum to their failed marriage. James loosened his tie and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, then stopped, staring at the amber liquid. How many nights had he done this? Drowning his demons in expensive liquor, telling himself he was nothing like his father while following the exact same patterns? His phone rang. Davidson. I'm not taking calls, Linda, he said into the intercom. James, it's after hours. Linda's gone home. Davidson's voice was grave. We need to talk about what happened today. Catherine Mitchell. She's not just looking for revenge. She's got a solid business plan and the board is listening. She found my father's other family, Bob. James sank into his leather armchair, the one Catherine used to curl up in with her morning coffee. All these years I thought I was better than him. Different. But I did the exact same thing he did. I ran away from my family. You didn't know about the twins, Davidson offered. Didn't I? James stood abruptly, pacing the room. Kate tried to tell me that day. I saw it in her eyes, in the way she kept touching her stomach. I was just too caught up in my own fears to listen. Too convinced I'd end up like him that I became him anyway. He walked to his home office, unlocking the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside lay a stack of letters, all from his father, all unopened. The last one had arrived just before his death 3 years ago. James had been too proud, too angry to read them. Now, with trembling fingers, he opened the most recent envelope. Dear James, he read aloud, his father's handwriting shaky with age. By the time you read this, I'll probably be gone. I know you hate me for what I did to you and your mother. You have every right to. But there's something you need to understand. Running away wasn't about not loving you. It was about being terrified of failing you. I saw myself becoming my own father, angry and cold, and I thought leaving was better than staying and destroying you. I was wrong. Running away didn't protect you. It just passed on the same fears, the same demons. If you're reading this, then you're probably wrestling with those demons yourself now. Don't make my mistake, son. Don't let fear of becoming me stop you from being the father you could be. James set down the letter, reaching for his phone. He pulled up a search for Catherine Mitchell, finding articles about her rise in the tech industry. Photos of charity events where she'd taken the twins. Every milestone he'd missed, documented in the public record. In one image, Alexander held a science fair trophy, beaming with pride. In another, Emma stood at a children's business competition, her poster board displaying a sophisticated lemonade stand marketing strategy. His fingers hovered over Catherine's number on the business card. It was nearly midnight, too late to call. Or was he just making excuses again? Before he could decide, a text message came through from an unknown number. The twins are still awake. They're excited about their upcoming birthday and asking about New York. Emma wants to know if the Empire State Building is really as tall as her science book says. Alex wants to know if there are really alligators in the sewers. If you're ready to be more than just another Manhattan myth to them, they're staying at the plaza with me. Room 1548. K. James stared at the message, his father's letter still open on the desk. He had spent 5 years building walls around his heart, telling himself it was for the best. Now those walls were crumbling and he had to decide. Would he run away like his father or find the courage to face what he'd done? He picked up his phone again, this time with steady hands. Kate, he typed, then deleted it. Catherine, he started over, I'd like to meet them. Not as the CEO of Thompson Industries or as some distant figure but as their father. If you'll let me if it's not too late? His finger hovered over the send button, years of fear and regret weighing against the chance to break the cycle of abandonment once and for all. Emma Thompson Mitchell stood at the window of their Plaza Hotel suite, her small nose pressed against the glass as she watched the twinkling lights of Manhattan. Her brother Alex sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, methodically arranging his collection of dinosaur facts cards in order of ferocity, a system only he understood. "Do you think he looks like Mom's pictures?" Emma asked, not turning from the window. They'd both spent countless hours studying the few photographs their mother kept locked in her desk drawer, trying to piece together the puzzle of their father. Alex shuffled his cards, a nervous habit he'd developed whenever they discussed James Thompson. "Mom says I look just like him. But maybe she just says that to make me feel better." He paused, picking up his favorite T-Rex card. "What if he doesn't like dinosaurs?" Sarah, their nanny, looked up from her book. She'd been with them since they were infants, the only other person besides their mother who knew the full story. "Your father's likes or dislikes don't change who you are, Alex. Remember what your mom always says? Be authentic," the twins recited in unison, a lesson Catherine had drilled into them from the moment they could understand words. Emma finally turned from the window, her face serious in a way that made her look startlingly like her father. "Mom's acting different here. Back home she never talks about him. But last night I heard her on the phone saying something about breaking cycles and second chances." The door to the master bedroom opened, and Catherine emerged in a casual sweater and jeans, a stark contrast to her corporate armor from earlier. She'd been staring at her phone for the past hour, reading and rereading James's message about wanting to meet the twins. "Come here you two," she said softly, sitting on the sofa. The twins immediately abandoned their activities, climbing up beside her. "We need to talk about something important." "Is it about our father?" Emma asked directly, always the one to cut to the chase. "Is that why we're really in New York?" Catherine took a deep breath, looking at her children. These perfect combinations of herself and James, these living reminders of both her greatest pain and her greatest joy. "Yes. Your father, he knows about you now. And he wants to meet you." Alex's eyes widened. "Really? When? Does he know I won first place in the science fair? Did you tell him about my dinosaur research?" "Slow down, buddy," Catherine smiled, running her fingers through his hair, so much like James's. "He wants to meet you, but this has to be your choice too. Both of you." She turned to Emma, who had grown unusually quiet. "What are you thinking, sweetheart?" Emma picked at a thread on her sleeve, her analytical mind clearly working overtime. "If he wants to meet us now, why didn't he want to meet us before? Did he not like us?" Catherine's heart clenched. This was the moment she'd been both dreading and preparing for. "It's complicated, Emma. Your father, he didn't know about you before. He made some mistakes, we both did, but those mistakes were never about not wanting you." "But you always know everything, Mom," Alex protested. "You know when we're trying to sneak extra cookies or when we switch places to confuse Sarah. How could he not know about us?" Catherine pulled them closer, breathing in the familiar scent of their shampoo. "Sometimes adults make decisions based on fear instead of love. Your father was afraid of becoming like his own father, who left him when he was young. He pushed me away before I could tell him about you. It wasn't right, but it wasn't your fault. Never think it was your fault." A text notification pinged on Catherine's phone. "James, I'm in the lobby. No pressure, but if they're willing, I'm ready." Emma, ever observant, caught the change in her mother's expression. "He's here, isn't he?" Catherine nodded. "He is. But remember what I said, this is your choice. We can wait if you're not ready." Alex stood up, squaring his small shoulders. "I want to meet him. I want to show him my dinosaur cards and tell him about the science fair." Emma remained seated, her face a storm of emotions. "What if he leaves again? What if he doesn't like who we are?" "Then it's his loss," Catherine said firmly. "You are both incredible and nothing he does or doesn't do will change that." "But Emma," she turned her daughter to face her, "sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give people a chance to be better than their past." The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication that had always amazed Catherine. Finally, Emma nodded. "Okay. But I'm not calling him Dad yet. He has to earn that." Catherine smiled, proud of her daughter's strength and wisdom. "That's fair. Should I tell him to come up?" Both twins nodded, then scrambled to prepare. Alex gathered his dinosaur cards while Emma smoothed her dress and stood up straighter, unconsciously mimicking her mother's power pose. Catherine picked up her phone, her finger hovering over the keypad. 5 years of anger and pain had led to this moment, but looking at her children's faces, equal parts nervous and excited, she realized that sometimes revenge wasn't about destroying someone's world. Sometimes it was about forcing them to see the better world they could have been part of all along. "Come up," she typed. "They're ready to meet you." The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt longer than any board meeting James had ever endured. His reflection in the polished doors showed a man he barely recognized, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled, vulnerability written across his face. The doors opened, and each step down the hallway echoed with the weight of 5 years of absence. Room 1548. James raised his hand to knock, then froze. Through the door, he could hear children's voices, his children's voices, engaged in what sounded like an intense debate about proper dinosaur classification. A girl's voice, Emma, he reminded himself, insisted that the Therizinosaurus should be categorized by its unusual features, while a boy, Alexander, defended traditional taxonomic classifications. Before he could knock, the door opened. Catherine stood there, having watched his hesitation through the peephole. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held a mixture of caution and something else, hope, perhaps? "They're nervous," she said quietly. "Try not to overwhelm them." James nodded, unable to speak as he stepped into the suite. The twins fell silent, their discussion forgotten as they turned to face him. The reality of seeing them in person rather than through photos or videos knocked the breath from his lungs. Emma stood slightly in front of her brother, protective despite being the same size, while Alex clutched his dinosaur cards like a shield. "Hello," James managed, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm James." Emma tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that reminded him of board members evaluating a risky proposal. "We know who you are. We've seen your pictures in Mom's drawer." "The secret drawer," Alex added, then looked guilty for revealing its existence. But Catherine just smiled, moving to stand behind her children, close enough to support them, but far enough to give this moment its space. James knelt down to their level, his expensive suit pants touching the carpet. "Your mom tells me you won first place in the science fair, Alex. Would you tell me about your project?" Alex's eyes lit up, though he tried to maintain his cautious expression. "It was about dinosaur extinction theories. Did you know there are multiple competing hypotheses about what caused the KPG extinction event?" "I didn't," James replied honestly, fighting back tears as he watched his son's passion shine through. "Would you teach me?" While Alex tentatively began explaining his project, Emma continued her scrutiny. "Mom says you run a big company," she interrupted. "Is it true you have a helicopter?" James smiled despite himself. "I do. Though I don't use it much anymore. It's pretty lonely up there." "Lonely like leaving your family?" Emma's question cut through the room like a knife, causing both Catherine and Alex to freeze. "Emma," Catherine started, but James held up his hand. "No, she has a right to ask." He met his daughter's challenging gaze. "Yes, lonely like that. I made a huge mistake leaving your mom. An even bigger one not knowing about you both. I was scared of becoming someone I hated, and in trying to avoid that, I became him anyway." "Mom says everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry," Alex offered quietly, surprising everyone. "Are you truly sorry?" James felt tears finally escape down his cheeks. "More sorry than I've ever been about anything in my life. I know I can't make up for the time I've missed, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try to be part of your lives now. Not running the company, not making business deals, just being your dad. If you'll have me." Emma's stern expression wavered. "Alex got his science brain from you. Mom always says that." "What did I get?" "Your leadership skills," Catherine answered from behind them. "The way you organize your friends at school, how you always know exactly what you want. That's all, James." "Is that true?" Emma asked James directly. He nodded. "I saw the video of your school play. The way you directed everyone, made sure everything ran smoothly. I used to do the same thing at your age. Though," he smiled slightly, "I was organizing trading cards at recess instead of theatrical productions." "I have trading cards too," Alex exclaimed, then caught himself, embarrassed by his outburst. "Hey," James said gently, "never be embarrassed about being excited about something you love. That's another thing I had to learn the hard way." He glanced at Catherine as he said this, and something passed between them, a recognition of how far they'd both come. Emma took a small step forward. If we let you be our dad, you have to promise not to leave again. Even when things get scary. Even when you're not sure you're doing it right." "Yeah," Alex chimed in, moving to stand beside his sister. "No taking the helicopter and flying away. James looked at his children, these incredible, brave, brilliant children he'd nearly lost forever, and made the easiest promise of his life. I will never leave you again. I'll spend every day trying to deserve being your father. And the helicopter? Maybe someday we could all take a ride together. As a family. If that's okay with your mom. 4 pairs of eyes turned to Catherine, who was watching the scene with tears in her own eyes. She'd come to New York seeking revenge, but seeing her children potentially gain the father they deserved. Maybe this was a better kind of justice. Later that evening, after the twins had finally exhausted themselves showing James every trading card, book and tablet game they'd brought, Catherine stood on the suite's balcony watching the city lights. The sound of Sarah putting the children to bed drifted through the open door, mixed with their excited whispers about their father's promise to take them to the Natural History Museum tomorrow. "They're amazing, Kate." James's voice came from behind her. He'd stayed longer than any of them had expected, ordering room service dinner and listening to every story the twins wanted to share. "You did an incredible job with them." Catherine didn't turn around. "They're amazing. No thanks to you." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, 5 years of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface now that the children weren't present. "I deserve that," James said quietly, moving to stand beside her at the railing. "I deserve all of it. The hostile takeover, losing the company, everything. But watching you with them today. I finally understand what my father's letter meant about fear destroying more than failure ever could." Now Catherine did turn, studying his profile in the city lights. "Your father's letter? He wrote to me before he died. I never opened his letters until yesterday." James pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of the letter. "He tried to warn me about becoming him by trying so hard not to become him. I didn't listen. Just like I didn't listen to you that day." Catherine read the letter, her hands trembling slightly. "All these years I thought you left because I wasn't enough. Because I didn't fit into your world of high-stakes business and power plays. I built Phoenix Enterprises to prove I could beat you at your own game. And you did," James acknowledged. "You outmaneuvered me completely. The board is ready to vote in your favor tomorrow." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "But watching Emma negotiate her bedtime tonight, seeing Alex explain his scientific theories, I realized something. The company doesn't matter. Nothing matters except the chance to be their father. If you'll let me." Catherine set down her phone, years of practiced business strategy warring with the way her heart had clenched watching James with their children. "You hurt me, James. Deeply. But today, seeing you with them." She took a shaky breath. "Emma asked me after you left if she could show you her business proposal for expanding her lemonade stand franchise. She's never shown that to anyone outside the family. She's brilliant," James smiled. "Just like her mother. They both are. Kate, I know I have no right to ask this, but tomorrow at the board meeting?" "I'm not backing down," Catherine cut him off. "Thompson Industries needs new leadership, fresh perspectives. The company's stagnating and you know it." "I agree," James said, surprising her. "That's not what I was going to ask. I was going to suggest a compromise. Cosios, you bring the innovation and fresh vision the company needs and He hesitated. "I focus on being a father first, executive second. Something I should have done 5 years ago." Catherine stared at him, trying to detect any manipulation in his proposal. "You'd accept that? Sharing power?" "I'd accept anything that gives me a chance to be in their lives," James replied honestly. "The company, the money, the power, none of it means anything compared to hearing Alex laugh or seeing Emma's determined little frown when she's thinking hard about something." From inside the suite, Alex's voice carried out, "Mom? Can you and Dad come say goodnight again?" They both froze at his use of the word dad. Catherine saw tears form in James's eyes. "He called me Dad," he whispered. "Don't mess this up, James," Catherine warned, but her voice had lost its edge. "They're giving you their trust. It's more valuable than any company." "I know," he nodded. "That's why I'm having my lawyers draw up papers tomorrow. 50% of my personal shares in the company, transferred to trust funds for Emma and Alex. No matter what happens between us, their future is secured." Catherine felt her carefully constructed walls of revenge beginning to crack. "James? I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quickly. "I haven't earned that yet. I'm just asking for a chance to try. To be the father they deserve and maybe—" He met her eyes, "to show you that I'm not the same man who let his fears destroy everything good in his life." Inside, Emma's voice joined her brother's. "Mom. Dad. We can't sleep without another good night." Catherine looked at James, seeing not the powerful CEO or the man who broke her heart, but someone fighting his own demons to be better. "We should go in." They won't sleep until we do. As they turned toward the door, James spoke softly. Thank you, Kate. Not for the company or the compromise, but for raising them to be capable of forgiveness. Even if I don't deserve it yet. Catherine paused at the threshold. Prove you deserve it. Not to me but to them. Break the cycle your father couldn't. That's worth more than any revenge I could take. The Thompson Industries boardroom buzzed with tension the next morning. Board members whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between Catherine and James, who sat on opposite sides of the massive mahogany table. The night's events had shifted something fundamental between them, but here in the arena of corporate power, old habits died hard. Davidson cleared his throat. Before we begin, I think we all deserve an explanation of yesterday's revelations. Ms. Mitchell, you claim to be not only the CEO of Phoenix Enterprises but also the mother of Mr. Thompson's children? Catherine opened her laptop with deliberate calm. Those aren't claims, Mr. Davidson. They're facts. Facts that have been verified by your own legal team overnight, I'm sure. She glanced at the stack of papers in front of the board's lawyer, who nodded reluctantly. The DNA tests confirm it, the lawyer stated. The twins are indeed Mr. Thompson's children. This changes everything, another board member interjected. A hostile takeover involving undisclosed heirs changes nothing about the company's fundamental problems, Catherine cut in. The failed merger, the stagnating tech division, the inability to adapt to changing markets. These issues exist regardless of my personal connection to James. James leaned forward. Which is why we're proposing a different solution. He nodded to his assistant, who distributed folders to each board member. A co-CEO structure. Catherine's innovative vision combined with my established relationships and market knowledge. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Davidson frowned, flipping through the proposal. Co-COS? That's highly unusual for a company of this size. The markets won't like it. The markets don't like failing mergers either, Catherine countered. She stood, commanding the room's attention. Look at these projections. Phoenix Enterprises has grown 300% in 5 years. We've developed patents that could revolutionize Thompson's tech division. Together we could. Together? Davidson interrupted. Yesterday you were threatening a hostile takeover. Now we're supposed to believe this is a happy corporate marriage? Catherine's eyes flashed. Nothing about this is happy, Mr. Davidson. But it is necessary. For the company, for the shareholders, and... She glanced at James, for our children. James stood as well, moving to stand beside her, a gesture not lost on the board. Bob, you've known me since I was a kid. You knew my father. You watched me spend years trying not to become him only to make the same mistakes. But this isn't about the past. It's about the future. He pulled up a presentation on the main screen. These are Catherine's innovations at Phoenix. Cutting-edge AI integration, sustainable tech solutions, market expansions we haven't even considered. And these, he switched slides, are our established markets, client relationships built over decades. Part we're vulnerable. Together we're unstoppable. And we're just supposed to trust this sudden partnership? Davidson pressed. Trust the numbers, Catherine replied. Trust the fact that I'm willing to merge Phoenix with Thompson instead of continuing the hostile takeover. Trust that we both want what's best for this company's future. And for our children who will inherit it. A younger board member spoke up. The trust funds you mentioned, Mr. Thompson. Transferring 50% of your shares to your children. That's a significant move. It's the right move, James said firmly. I've spent 5 years putting this company above everything else. That ends today. Whether the board accepts our co-CEO proposal or not, my children will have their inheritance secured. Before either parent could respond, Emma cut in with her usual practical approach. We should wait until after the board votes. That's why we're really in New York, right? For the company stuff? Catherine marveled at her daughter's perception. Yes, partly. But we're also here because your father wants to be part of your lives. The company is just complicated adult stuff. Like how you came to get revenge but now you're not so mad anymore? Emma asked innocently. The adults stared at her. How did you? Catherine began. I heard you on the phone with Aunt Rachel, Emma shrugged. You said revenge is best served cold, but some things are more important than revenge. I looked up what that means. James reached across the table, gently taking Catherine's hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. Your mom is right. Some things are more important. Like family. Like second chances. And dinosaur cups? Alex added hopefully. And dinosaur cups, James laughed, the tension breaking. The sound of a phone buzzing made them all jump. Catherine pulled out her phone, her expression changing as she read the message. It's Davidson. The board has reached their decision. James squeezed her hand once before letting go. Whatever they decide, we'll figure it out. Together? Emma stood up straighter. As a family? The word hung in the air between them all, fragile and hopeful. Catherine looked at James, then at their children, these amazing little people who somehow had enough love in their hearts to give their father a second chance. Yes, she said finally. As a family. The walk back to the Thompson Industries building felt both too long and too short. Catherine and James had left the twins with Sarah, promising to return with news that would shape all their futures. The city streets were quieter now, the workday crowd thinned to a scattered few. Their footsteps fell into an unconscious rhythm as they approached the familiar glass tower. Whatever happens in there, James said quietly, I meant what I said at dinner. We'll figure it out together. Catherine adjusted her blazer, a gesture he recognized from their married days, her armor going up. The company isn't what I'm worried about anymore. The twins, they're already so attached to you. If this goes wrong? It won't, James assured her, holding the door open. They're smarter than I ever was. They know what matters. The elevator ride was silent, both lost in thoughts of how much had changed in just 2 days. The same security guard who had escorted Catherine out 5 years ago now nodded respectfully as they passed. The boardroom doors loomed before them, heavy with possibility. Davidson sat at the head of the table, the other board members arranged around him like a corporate jury. His face gave nothing away as Catherine and James took their seats, together this time, a united front. We've reviewed your proposal extensively, Davidson began, shuffling papers with deliberate slowness. The co-CEO structure is unprecedented for Thompson Industries. It carries significant risks. Catherine felt her hand curl into a fist under the table. James, sensing her tension, subtly moved his chair closer. However, Davidson continued, after considerable discussion and examination of Phoenix Enterprises' track record, we've come to a decision. He paused, looking between them. The board votes in favor of the co-CEO structure, with conditions. The tension in Catherine's shoulders released slightly, but her business instincts remained sharp. What conditions? First, a 6-month trial period. The arrangement will be reassessed based on company performance and leadership cohesion. Davidson laid out a contract. Second, both of you must attend weekly sessions with a corporate mediator to ensure personal history doesn't interfere with business decisions. Agreed, James said immediately. Anything else? Davidson's expression softened slightly. The board also requests that the company's name be updated to reflect this new chapter. Thompson Mitchell Industries has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Catherine's carefully maintained composure cracked. You want to change the company name? It's time, James said softly. The company's future should reflect both its leaders, both its legacies. The paperwork is ready, Davidson gestured to the contracts before them. All we need are your signatures to make it official. Catherine stared at the documents, remembering another set of papers she'd refused to sign in this very building 5 years ago. James, are you sure? Your father's legacy? My father's legacy was fear, James interrupted. Fear of change, fear of trust, fear of love. This, he gestured to the contracts, this is about building something new. Something better? Catherine picked up the pen, its weight far lighter than the one she'd held 5 years ago. Thompson Mitchell Industries, she tested the name. Emma will love that. She's already planning to be CEO when she turns 18. James laughed, picking up his own pen. Alex told me he wants to open a dinosaur division. Speaking of the children, Davidson interjected, the board has one final condition. Those trust funds you mentioned, Mr. Thompson, we want them established immediately with Mrs. Mitchell as co-trustee. The future of this company belongs to them as much as to anyone. Catherine signed her name with a steady hand, watching as James did the same. As Davidson collected the contracts, she felt something shift in the air, the last remnants of her revenge plot transforming into something else entirely. Congratulations, Davidson stood, extending his hand. Thompson Mitchell Industries is now under new leadership. Don't make us regret this decision. As they left the boardroom, Catherine pulled out her phone to call Sarah. James touched her arm gently. Wait. Before we tell them, there's something else we need to discuss. Catherine lowered the phone. What is it? Boston, James said simply. My sister Lisa. She's been asking about meeting the twins ever since I told her about them. Maybe it's time to heal more than just our part of the family. Catherine studied his face, seeing the same vulnerability she'd recognized in Alex when he was unsure about sharing his dinosaur facts. One step at a time, James. But yes, I think a family trip to Boston might be exactly what we all need. They stepped into the elevator, watching their reflection in its polished doors. No longer adversaries, not quite friends, but something new. Something with potential. Thompson Mitchell Industries, Catherine mused. It really does have a nice ring to it. Better than Phoenix Enterprises? James teased. Catherine smiled, surprising them both. Phoenix was about rising from the ashes of what we destroyed. This is about building something new. Together. Sarah had just finished helping the twins build a pillow fort in the hotel suite's living room when Catherine and James returned. Alex poked his head out from between two cushions, his hair tousled from their construction project, while Emma perched on top of their creation like a tiny corporate queen. Well? Emma demanded, her father's impatience evident in her tone. Did the board vote yes? Catherine exchanged a look with James before settling onto the couch. Come here, both of you. We need to talk about some changes that are coming. The twins scrambled down from their fort, Alex clutching his favorite dinosaur card for comfort. They settled on the floor in front of their parents, their matching blue eyes full of questions. The board did vote yes, James began, but that's not the only change. The company is getting a new name, Thompson Mitchell Industries. Emma's eyes widened. Mitchell like us? Like Mom? Exactly like Mom, James smiled. Because from now on, your mom and I will be running the company together. As equals. Does this mean we have to move to New York? Alex asked quietly, his small fingers tightening around his dinosaur card. What about my friends in Seattle? And my science club? Catherine reached out to smooth his hair. No, buddy. We're not moving permanently. Your dad and I will split our time between offices, but your home is still in Seattle. She paused, glancing at James. Though we might be taking some family trips to New York. And maybe, to Boston. To meet Aunt Lisa? Alex perked up. The dinosaur scientist? And your other aunt and uncle, James nodded. If that's something you both want. Emma, ever the analytical one, furrowed her brow. But what about the revenge plan? I heard you talking about it, Mom. Isn't that why we came to New York? Catherine felt James stiffen beside her, but she kept her voice steady. Sometimes, Emma, we think we want revenge when what we really want is to be seen. To be valued. Your father has shown me, shown all of us, that he sees us now. Really sees us. Like how he watched my whole business presentation? Emma asked. And didn't check his phone once like Tommy's dad does? Exactly like that, Catherine smiled, feeling tears prick at her eyes. And he knows all the dinosaurs I told him about, Alex added proudly. Even the hard ones like Pachycephalosaurus. James cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rough. That's because you're both more important than any business meeting or phone call. I know I wasn't here before, but I promise you, nothing matters more to me than being your dad now. Pinky promise? Alex held out his small finger. James wrapped his pinky around his son's. Pinky promise. The strongest kind there is. Emma stood up, hands on her hips in a pose that perfectly mimicked her mother. Well, if we're going to be a proper family, we need proper family meetings. That's what Madison's parents do. They have a weekly dinner where everyone talks about their goals and achievements. Catherine couldn't help but laugh. And let me guess, you already have a business plan for these family meetings? Obviously, Emma rolled her eyes. Alex and I worked it out in the pillow fort. We need an agenda, action items, and... She looked at her father hopefully. Maybe we could do them in the big conference room sometimes? When we're in New York? James pretended to consider it seriously. The conference room? I don't know. That's usually reserved for very important meetings. We are very important. Alex protested. Mom says so all the time. He's right, Catherine said softly, meeting James's eyes. They're the most important thing in either of our worlds. The moment was interrupted by Alex's stomach growling loudly. Speaking of important things, he grinned sheepishly, can we order pizza? Dad hasn't tried the special way we eat it yet. Special way? James looked bewildered. Dinosaur style, the twins said in unison. Catherine stood up, reaching for the room service menu. You cut the pizza into tiny pieces and pretend you're different dinosaurs eating based on your diet classification. Herbivores get the veggie pieces, carnivores get the meat toppings. And I'm always a Therizinosaurus because they could eat both. Alex finished proudly. As Catherine placed the order, she watched James dive into the pillow fort with the twins, listening intently as they explained the complex rules of dinosaur dining. 5 years ago, she'd come to New York seeking revenge, carrying the weight of betrayal and lost dreams. Now, watching her children teach their father their silly pizza game, she realized that sometimes the best revenge wasn't about destroying someone's world, it was about building a new one together. 1 month later, Catherine sat in what had once been James's executive office, now transformed into a shared workspace. The wall that had once displayed his business awards now held framed drawings from the twins, Emma's detailed organizational charts for her expanding lemonade empire next to Alex's carefully labeled dinosaur sketches. The Tokyo merger numbers look promising, James said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. He'd remembered how she took it, splash of cream, no sugar. Some habits died hard. But I think you'll be more interested in these. He handed her a tablet displaying photos from the Boston trip they'd taken last weekend. Alex sitting on Aunt Lisa's shoulders at the Museum of Science, both of them gesturing excitedly at a T-Rex skeleton. Emma deep in conversation with Uncle Michael about investment strategies while Aunt Sarah taught her to make their grandmother's famous cookies. They look happy, Catherine observed, swiping through the images. Alex hasn't stopped talking about Lisa's fossil collection since we got back. And Emma's already drafted a business plan for expanding Grandma's cookie recipe into a nationwide brand, James chuckled. Though she insists we need to perfect the dinosaur-shaped cookie cutter first, for Alex's sake. Catherine set down the tablet, studying James over the rim of her coffee cup. Your mother called me yesterday. She wants to come to Seattle next month for their birthday party. James stilled. Are you okay with that? After everything? She's their grandmother, Catherine shrugged. And she's been sending them cards and gifts since she found out about them. Besides, she smiled slightly, Emma says we need to consolidate our family assets, whatever that means. Our daughter, the 5-year-old corporate mastermind, James shook his head fondly. Speaking of which, have you seen the latest revision of her proposal for the company daycare center? You mean the one where she wants to incorporate a junior boardroom for kids to practice their presentation skills? That's the one. Davidson actually thinks it's not a bad idea. Something about cultivating the next generation of leadership. Their comfortable conversation was interrupted by James's assistant. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Mitchell, your children are on line 1. Their nanny says it's urgent. They shared a concerned look before Catherine hit the speakerphone. Emma? Alex? What's wrong? Mom. Dad. Alex's excited voice filled the office. You have to come home tonight. We made a discovery. A very important business and scientific discovery, Emma added importantly. It could change everything. James leaned toward the phone. Change everything how, sweetheart? We figured out how to make the dinosaur cookies into collectible items for the lemonade stand. Alex burst out, unable to contain himself. Like trading cards, but you can eat them. And we need to present our findings over dinner, Emma continued. It's very official. Alex is wearing his tie and everything. Catherine bit back a laugh. His dinosaur tie? Obviously, both twins replied in unison. We'll be there, James promised. I'll even bring my special presentation notebook. After ending the call, Catherine turned to James. You know this means we'll be eating dinosaur-shaped cookies and drinking lemonade for dinner while our children give us a PowerPoint presentation. Wouldn't miss it for the world, James smiled. Though I do have one condition. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Oh? Have dinner with me after they go to bed? There's something I want to talk to you about. The old Catherine would have immediately assumed the worst, would have felt her walls going up. But the past month had shown her a different side of James. A man who stayed up late helping Alex practice dinosaur names, who attended every one of Emma's miniature board meetings with complete seriousness. Okay, she found herself saying. But not at Le Cirque or any of your fancy restaurants. That diner around the corner from my place. The one with the kids' drawings all over the walls. The twins love their milkshakes. The one where Alex insisted on teaching the cook the proper way to cut sandwiches into dinosaur shapes? James grinned. Perfect. Though I should warn you, I plan to share my milkshake. Catherine felt her cheeks warm. James? Too much, he asked softly. No, she surprised herself by saying. Not too much. Just unexpected. Like everything else these past few weeks. Their eyes met across the desk that had once symbolized their division but now served as a bridge. The revenge that had brought Catherine back to New York seemed like a distant memory, replaced by something far more valuable. The chance to build something new not just for their children but maybe, just maybe, for themselves too. The diner's neon sign cast a warm glow through the window of their corner booth. The twins' presentation had run long, complete with prototype cookies, market research conducted during recess, and Alex's detailed drawings of dinosaur optimization shapes for maximum cookie durability. Now, with the children tucked into bed by Sarah, Catherine found herself sitting across from James, sharing a chocolate milkshake just like they used to before everything fell apart. Emma's presentation skills are getting scary good, James mused, stirring the milkshake with a long spoon. She had Davidson's exact head tilt when she was reviewing the profit projections. Catherine smiled, watching him fidget with his napkin, a tell she remembered from their dating days. Something's on your mind, James? What did you want to talk about? He took a deep breath, reaching into his jacket pocket. I found this while cleaning out my father's old lake house last weekend. He placed a small, worn envelope on the table between them. It's dated 2 days before our wedding. Catherine stared at the envelope, her name written in her former father-in-law's shaky handwriting. I never received this. He never sent it, James explained. I think he was too ashamed. But you should read it now. With slightly trembling fingers, Catherine opened the letter. Dear Catherine, by the time you marry my son tomorrow, I'll be long gone, another coward's escape to add to my legacy. But you deserve to know why. I see how you look at James with such hope and love. The same way his mother once looked at me. And I see him fighting the same demons I never could defeat, the fear of becoming me. I'm writing to beg you not to give up on him, even when he tries to push you away. He learned that from me, this habit of running from love before it can disappoint him. But you're stronger than I ever was. I see it in your eyes, in the way you stand your ground when he retreats into his work. James will try to become me by trying not to become me. It's the cruel irony of fathers and sons. But you, Catherine, you could be the one to break this cycle. To show him that love isn't a weakness to fear, but a strength to embrace. I'm a coward for not saying this in person. For not being there tomorrow to see my son marry a woman who could save him from my legacy. Perhaps one day, if you have children of your own, you'll understand both the fear and the hope that comes with family. Take care of him. And don't let him take care of you the way I took care of those I claimed to love, from a safe distance, with walls built from pride and fear. With regret and hope. Richard Thompson. Catherine set down the letter, her vision blurring slightly. Why show me this now? James reached across the table, taking her hand. Because he was right about everything. About my fears, about you being strong enough to break the cycle. And most of all, about me trying so hard not to become him that I became him anyway. He squeezed her hand gently. But you did break the cycle, Kate. Not by staying when I pushed you away, but by coming back stronger. By showing me what real strength looks like through our children. James? Catherine started, but he held up his other hand. Let me finish. This past month, watching you with the twins, running the company together, seeing how you've helped me reconnect with my family in Boston. I've realized something. The man I was 5 years ago was so afraid of love that he pushed it away. But I'm not that man anymore. He pulled something else from his pocket, a small velvet box. And I'm hoping you're not the same woman either. Catherine's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing not a ring but a key. What is this? A key to a new house. Not in New York or Seattle, but halfway between. A place that could be ours, all of ours. With a room for Emma's business headquarters, a dinosaur library for Alex, and, he hesitated, maybe a chance for us to start over. Not as CEO and CFO, not as co-parents, but as James and Kate. If you want to. The company, Catherine began, can be run from anywhere. We've proven that this month. This isn't about the company anymore, Kate. It's about us. About finally being brave enough to love without fear. He smiled softly. Emma already has plans for the home office layout, and Alex is excited about the backyard being perfect for archaeological digs. You told the twins before asking me? They told me, James corrected. Last week during our secret ice cream meeting. Emma said, and I quote, Daddy, you're being inefficient with your resources. Consolidate your assets. He chuckled. She meant we should all live together. Catherine stared at the key, feeling the weight of the past 5 years, the pain, the growth, the revenge turned redemption. And what do you think? I think I love you, James said simply. I think I never stopped loving you. I was just too afraid to admit it. But our children taught me that love isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace, dinosaur cookies and all. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support. Catherine stared at the key gleaming under the diner's neon lights, memories flooding back, of their first date in this very booth, of the day she'd left New York with her world shattered, of Emma and Alex's first steps, first words, all the moments James had missed. But also newer memories. James patiently listening to Alex's dinosaur facts, attending Emma's business presentations, the way he'd defended her to the board, and how he'd finally faced his fears about his own family. Before I answer, she said carefully, I need you to understand something. When I came back to New York, revenge wasn't just about hurting you. It was about proving something to myself. That I was strong enough to succeed without you, that I could build something meaningful from the ashes of what we lost. James nodded, his hand still covering hers. You did prove that. You built an empire, raised our children, and became stronger than I ever imagined possible. But something unexpected happened, Catherine continued, turning the key over in her palm. Watching you with Emma and Alex, seeing you face your fears and break the cycle your father couldn't. I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's world. It's about building a better one together. She looked up, meeting his eyes. The house, where exactly is it? Denver, James smiled. Equal distance between both offices. It has a view of the mountains that reminded me of how you always said you wanted to wake up seeing something majestic. There's a science museum nearby for Alex, and the neighborhood has an active young entrepreneurs club that Emma would love. You've thought of everything. I had help. Emma made a PowerPoint presentation about the property's strategic advantages, and Alex researched local fossil sites. James squeezed her hand. But what matters most is that it could be our fresh start. No more running from love, no more fears about becoming my father. Just us building something new together. Catherine took a deep breath, years of hurt and hope warring in her heart. The twins need stability. They need their family whole, James countered gently. Something Emma reminds me of every time she updates her family optimization strategy document. Despite herself, Catherine laughed. She's definitely your daughter. She's ours, James corrected. They both are. And they've shown me what real courage looks like, not running from your fears but facing them head-on, dinosaur cookies and all. Catherine looked at the key again, remembering something Emma had said during their first dinner together. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give people a chance to be better than their past. Yes, she said finally. Yes. Yes to the house. Yes to starting over. Yes to building something new, together. She squeezed his hand. But on one condition. Anything. We frame your father's letter in our new home. To remind us that cycles can be broken, that fear doesn't have to win, and that sometimes the thing we think we want isn't what we need at all. James stood up, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. Through the diner window they could see the New York skyline. The same view that had witnessed their separation now bearing witness to their reunion. Later that night, as they told the twins about their decision, Emma's businesslike composure cracked into pure childish joy, while Alex launched into an excited explanation of all the dinosaur fossils they might find in their new backyard. Watching their children celebrate, Catherine realized that 5 years ago, she'd come to New York seeking revenge, carrying the weight of betrayal and broken dreams. But life had given her something far more valuable. The chance to turn pain into growth, fear into courage, and revenge into redemption. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something beautiful from the pieces. Sometimes the strongest revenge is forgiveness, and the bravest act is giving love a second chance. And sometimes, just sometimes, the family you fight to tear apart becomes the family you fight to keep together, dinosaur cookies, business presentations and all. As Emma would say in her next business presentation, the return on investment for forgiveness is higher than the profit margins of revenge. Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom that even the most powerful CEOs could learn from.